Our students are the future. How we advance innovation and impact and approach equity in their classrooms will determine how we thrive as a world community. The status quo just won't cut it. That's why we're here to break the grade. Hello, breakers and difference makers. I'm Josh Chernikoff, host of How I Broke That. I'm a two-time entrepreneur in the education space, and I've successfully exited both of those companies. I've experienced my fair share of breaks in my life, and I'm here to bring my signature approach to my new show, Breaking the Grade. I'm embarking on this special journey alongside my good friend and mentor, John Gamba, Director of Innovative Programs and Entrepreneur in Residence at Penn GSE. In our podcast, you'll hear from emerging business owners in the education space who are working to transform education as we know it. Tune in as we hear about industry trends, unique principles and practices, and the attempts that have and haven't worked for our grade-breaking guests. So fellow entrepreneurs and educators, what do you think? Are you ready to take a hammer to the education space and break the grade? Welcome to Breaking the Grade. Welcome to another edition of Breaking the Grade. I don't have to be the one to tell you this, but I will. Good things come to those who wait. And I had to wait probably more than a year for my chance to get to work with my friend and my client, Paul King. And now Paul King is joining us on Breaking the Grade, and I'm excited to have him because, boy, do we have a really great story to tell. So just remember, good things come to those who wait. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. When I say good things come to those who wait, I mean for me and my business, for you and your business, and then we know that in life in general. So we'll go through why we had to wait and how it was worth it. But let's first kind of take our audience of education founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs through a little bit of your journey, which we have some parallels in terms of starting tutoring companies. So talk about where you're from very briefly. You don't have to go into the Eagles or the Phillies or any of that crap. Just tell us where you're from, and then let's talk about your tutoring company.
Sure. Well, I think you gave it away there. I'm originally from the Philly suburbs. Grew up, in South Jersey, but I've been in New York City now for over 10 years. I've started my tutoring company over 10 years ago, was working privately, one-on-one, really with kids who are in the private schools here, uptown, Upper East Side, Upper West Side families, SAT, ACT prep with those kinds of clients. And I worked in that space for about 10 years. And over time, I ran into some problems with, scalability with one-on-one with very affluent clients who want to work directly with me. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much you can charge. And so when it came time to how do I scale this, I think that's really when I needed some help. And I needed to pivot I pivoted the business to away from B2C and more towards working with schools. And I didn't quite know how to do that very well. So that's kind of what led me to you. Gotcha. In terms of the first tutoring business, talk about the good parts of it. What did it teach you? What are you still using from that business today to grow your current business? Sure. So I think what I would talk to parents, and when I would do the initial consultation, and I would hear the same thing over and over again, which was, my son or my daughter, they're just not a good test taker, and they're just not math students, and they had a ceiling that they thought was the max that their student could get to. And I would always say, okay, well, let's see how it goes. And the transformation that would occur would be, I knew that ceiling was not real. And that if we helped this student who was so-called not a math student, if we went back and we repaired a lot of the foundational skills that weren't there, the student had gaps in their pre-algebra knowledge from middle or even elementary school, that if we go back and we rebuild that foundation, they're going to be able to access that SAT math or that ACT math way, way, way better. But they don't have that opportunity in school. You have that opportunity in a one-on-one setting that it can be it is transformational. And so that ceiling, that student would blow past that ceiling, so we'd see SAT scores go up 200-300 points, and which is great. And I was always thrilled when they did awesome, and the parents were thrilled, and the parents were like, great, now we can get into a top tier school. That was always the marquee headline for success. But for me, what I loved seeing the most was that the student, the internal shift that was like, I thought I was only a 1200 kid. And then I realized I was a 1400 or higher kid. And I never thought I would get there. And I think that inner shift of self-confidence and self-esteem, I think that's the purpose of tutoring. I think that's why we do it. Everything else is, accolades to hang on your wall. But that change in one's self-confidence, that student's going to take that with them. If I did what I didn't think I could do there, well, what else might I be capable of? Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to affect. Whether I'm working one-on-one with a student or whether we're working in a school or a district that's struggling.
And obviously that confidence and clarity and ability to get into that top tier school for your students was something that probably translated into confidence for you, and also maybe clarity in your business, in the sense that I'm not sure how scalable this is. And so you started to think about another business. And that's when we got to meet. And I recognized that this is somebody I want to work with. I thought you had a great business idea, and you were starting to get proof of concept. So can you talk about the pivot that you began to make away from the one-to-one tutoring business to where you are now?
Sure. So I think that what we were doing one-on-one with helping students and repairing foundational gaps in math and in literacy, although my current business now is just focused on math, we realized that was sort of a problem and a pain point writ large across the public school system. And I had the firsthand chance to see that when a nonprofit contracted us to do SAT prep in 3 public schools in Queens. And we came in and we had our curriculum, and we're coming from this private school Upper East Side world. So we import this curriculum and import the tutors from there. I taught one of the classes myself. We get in the room. First off, half the class speaks Spanish and very little English. We're not equipped for that. And the curriculum is just not meeting these students where they are. So we had initial challenges in meeting this demographic. And despite that, we'd have a Saturday morning class, and these kids were showing up week after week. They wanted to be there and they wanted to learn. And some of them would come up to me after class and they'd ask me questions in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish. I try my very best to help them. Mm-hmm. But it broke my heart that I couldn't do a better job. And that was kind of the first, realization that I had that there's a huge need here. And the other piece was that if all I'm doing is working with kids who are in the private schools, then I am perpetuating a system that is inequitable, right? I mean, these are the kids that have access to the best supports, and then we have countless other schools that don't. So how do I take what I'm doing well in a one-on-one setting and try and scale it in a public school classroom? That was a major challenge that I wanted to solve. And beyond how to be effective in that space, it was like, how do we even get the word out that we're building a program in this space? And I realized SAT prep really wasn't the way in. What was really needed was foundational math rebuilding. And I kind of merged the two with my test prep side. Rather than focus on SAT, I went for the Algebra 1 Regents exam, which is a New York State test that they need to graduate. And so paired kind of prep for that exam with foundational math support. But really the emphasis is on that foundational math support, and we're using that as an on-ramp to exam readiness and algebra readiness. So that was the model, and you really helped at that point, help me package that.
Right. The parallels between our two businesses and probably other people, you have your starter business, learn a lot, maybe not as scalable as one would have hoped or you probably thought on day one. You leverage the skills that you learned and potentially your network. You see an opportunity, and then you also have to rediscover what your passion is, and what you're passionate about as you move into that second business, because you've gotten your ass kicked, by the first one. So you got to pull yourself up off the mat and you got to want to do it again. And in this case, I think you had all those elements come together. You learned from the first business. Clearly you enjoyed being an entrepreneur. You were able to leverage that network and kind of take the good from what you did. And you're passionate about trying to fix this system. So talk about where the business is today, and talk about the fact that you're very focused on one type of school and student and test. And for most people in our audience, that's something that they have to get comfortable with because it feels actually the opposite of what they should be doing. So talk about that, how you're very focused, please, on that one type of student, test, and school.
Yes. So as I mentioned, for us, that was the Algebra 1 Regents exam. And part of it, there was a little bit of serendipity in that we won an RFP specifically to tutor that exam from the New York City Department of Probation. And we built a pilot program working with kids who were just as involved. And that was really where that model came from. And then we basically pitched that to the New York City Department of Ed and got a contract there. So we're working in the public schools now. We ran 4 pilots in the spring, 3 in the South Bronx and 1 in Brooklyn. And what we're doing is look at this point, wanting to work specifically with high schools, so grades 9 through 12, where the pass rate for this Algebra 1 Regents exam is at or below 50%. And you've got at least 25 students in the school taking that exam. So it's really, we're looking the bottom third of high schools in New York City. Those are the schools we really want to, and that's who we're marketing to, and that's what our messaging is all about. And to your point, when you're initially, it feels like, well, why would I limit myself? Why don't I offer a host of services to sort of meet every possible school and then capture more of the market? And I think someone who's done that, I'll tell you, the messaging is so muddled. Nobody knows what is it that you do? What is it that you're about? Why are you doing what you're doing? I think if that's not there, you're not giving somebody really something concrete to reach out to you to have a conversation about. But when you are very laser focused and niche down, as you say, on your ideal client, that I want to help this particular person solve this one particular problem. You have kids who aren't passing this exam. And the pain point I didn't mention is that if they don't pass, they don't graduate. And so they have to keep taking this exam. And many, many, many schools, many principals have told me, I've got kids who have failed this 2, 3, 4 times. And we have attempted to solve this problem on our own with staff that feel burned out and they want to, they don't want to stay after school to work with the kid that they already tried to tutor who already failed this once. So it is a real pain point. And even for some schools, if they don't get their pass rates up, they could face something called receivership. The state could take over. They could face closure. Principals could lose their jobs. So these are real consequences that we want to come in and help them avoid, and help them not just avoid, but transform the culture of achievement in the school. And when that's kind of what we live and breathe, I know that the messaging lands with the people that we want to talk to, and we want not just any business, but we want school partners that get what we're about and and really want to work with us. Not so much, okay, great, come in, here's a purchase order, work your magic. We'll talk to you in June. We want people who are going to be involved through this process, and it's a true partnership. It's not just like a transaction. And so I think when your messaging's clear and when you're really niche down like that, you have a much higher likelihood of making contact with those people who are going to be really wonderful to work with. It's rewarding for everybody involved. And I will say I wasn't expecting that when I started this pivot, but it is an added bonus and a wonderful reward of sort of getting clear on what you do and what pain point you want to solve.
I wasn't expecting it when I started my third business, that I would get to have relationships like this that were very, very not transactional and very beneficial in multiple ways on both sides. And I've experienced this with every single member of our community. We've had 163 members, and many of them because we're all well connected. The only thing that I want to not push back on, but go back to, is how you just casually mentioned that last spring you had 4 pilots, and I love how that now just kind of rolls off your tongue there. But that was a real challenge to get, and you did it with hard work. And you drank a very tall glass of the Ed Sales Elevation Experience, and you clearly just gave us a nice lesson in it by talking about perfect client, credibility, messaging, and your offer. But let's back up and let's talk about how you got those 4 pilots and what that has done for the business, not just now, but year over year, how it's going to affect the business.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. I did just kind of gloss over that. So I will say some of those pilots, we got through what I know you call slow burn methods. And I agree with that, why you call them that, because it took a while and it wasn't necessarily sustainable how we got some of that. But it was I went to some conferences. I was networking with DOE central office and principals and telling them about this RFP we had run with the probation office and how we were working with these justice involved kids, and met the right person who was running an initiative to support students who were in temporary housing, living in shelter. It was a former principal in the South Bronx who then was working at DOE Central. And he's like, you sound like, and your team sounds like the right people to work with this demographic of student. So he brought us in to 3 high schools, actually, in the South Bronx. They were international schools with students predominantly spoke Spanish. And we had learned our lessons from the SAT prep days, that I hired a very different team, fully bilingual, could meet these students where they were. And that was how we got the initial 3. Number 4 was through 3E. So that was just through your raise your hand campaign on LinkedIn. I retooled the profile, started getting clearer on my messaging, started getting some inbound. And this was a principal out in Brooklyn who I had, just only from LinkedIn messaging. He's like, oh, I want to hear about your program. And he must have had a little bit of budget because he brought us in for a pilot. And that happened pretty quickly, unexpectedly. It was really a bonus, and it was a testament to the work we did and what you teach in 3E and applying those methods. But the combination of the two, I think, is great, because it's not like I'm going to stop going to conferences. I'm probably going to more conferences now than ever.
Yeah.
So those slow burns work, but it's not a way to like sustainably get traction, So I think you need both.
Yeah, our mutual friend John Gamba will push back on the idea of slow burn methods as only being a negative, and in this case, you're highlighting how they can also be a positive. I think slow burn methods done well can work when you are consistently emailing with a clear offer and quality messaging, and you're boosting your credibility. When you are going to conferences with a clear message and a clear offer, and you're consistently boosting your credibility, these things all start to work. And so we started to feel that together, and your cohort that you were a member of, because we were sharing all the wins. Everybody was beginning to see this momentum, and now it's carried you into this year. And now you're beginning to level up. We're working very closely to prepare you for a big event. We're recording this on September 9th. It takes place in 5 days. And it will absolutely be a win, and we'll learn from it together. I want to talk about leveraging wins, and how I think you've also, because you are so coachable, how you have embraced this idea that we are going to win at all costs. So if you're going to go to an event, we're going to win. If you're going to create a post, we're going to win. If you're going to do an interview with a client, you're going to win. So talk about that mindset and how you've kind of turned the corner on leveraging every single win as much as you can.
Sure. I mean, let me start with the pilots, leveraging those. And you've certainly been hugely helpful to me in how to leverage that on LinkedIn and promote those wins. But I think one of the things that has started to happen for us is once we had those pilots in place, we collect the data, and then that data is our ticket to not only renewal conversations, but broader conversations with districts and that's where I'm going next week. Is I'm getting in front of 60 DOE officials, 30 of whom are principals in Queens South. So pretty much every high school in this district, I've looked at the data, I think could benefit from what we offer. And the reason I landed this is because I connected with the math instructional lead over there, told her about what we were doing, had an initial conversation with her where I showed her the data. Here's what we did. And that speaks volumes. So I will say, it's like once you've got that in hand, then do your very best to get it out there and show key decision makers what you're doing. And I think probably in any bureaucracy, in any education department, there are these key decision makers who are discerning, and who know when you show them something that shows promise and shows traction, they want you in front of the room. They do. You're not even really selling so much. It's just sharing. Here's what we're doing, and it starts to open doors. So that's one big way. I mean, another way is what we're doing right now. Let's get on a video call and record it. And I've done 2 of these now, one with a principal in the South Bronx, another with an assistant principal who really oversaw our tutoring program out in Brooklyn. And just ask them questions. What did you think? And get their own words. And that's going to speak far more loudly than anything I can say about the program. Mm-hmm. Is those school partners who have seen the impact in their own schools, who are renewing the program and unlocking 3 or 4 times the amount of budget they did last year to have it run year round. We were running semester long pilots from January or February through June. These schools are now going to be running this from October through June. And instead of Beautiful. Twice a week, it's 3 times a week. So it's and have them share that, and use social media, use LinkedIn to get that in front of more of your ideal client. I think that's a great way to leverage. Yeah.
You detailed the playbook, and really one of where I learned this a lot and reread it a lot is Daniel Priestley in his book Oversubscribed. And people don't buy from me. Actually, people buy from Paul King. People buy from Rose. People buy from Grace, the people who have been through the Ed Sales Elevation experience. So what I think is really important for us to hit on, and as we kind of wrap up this conversation, is something that you transformed in yourself, which I have seen. One of the ways that we started to work together was a deck that you did for a potential client, Fusion Academy, big opportunity. And we haven't necessarily taken the time to look back at that deck, but I would love to see what that deck looks like versus the deck that you're creating for this opportunity that's a big one next week. The main difference is that you aren't selling when you're going to go talk to these folks. You're going to coach them. You're going to give them value. You're going to let them see who you are and how you can help them. And then you're going to let them come to you. And so, again, kind of goes back to something we discussed earlier. We're a little bit doing the opposite of, what we think we should do, as opposed to going to an event and just talking through my wins and who I am and where I've come from. You're going through there and you're talking about ways that you can help them and hopefully giving them enough value so they understand who you are. Can you talk about that mind shift and how that has changed for you? And hopefully it's taken pressure off you because you know what you're talking about.
It absolutely has, and it takes pressure off when you don't feel like you have to make a sale. If all I'm doing is I'm showing up and I can share with what we're doing, what I know works, and even give people some quick wins that they can just take and do on their own. Hey, maybe if you're trying to solve for this problem of your students not passing this exam and you just want to solve, you don't have budget, you just want to try and solve it in-house. Here are some things that we've done that we know work to, say, inspire some attendance. If it could be just as simple as that. Are you having trouble getting kids in the door for any kind of after-school tutoring or supplemental tutoring? Here are some things we do. And here's a free resource if you want to try and do that yourself. And then I'm not even talking about our tutoring program. I'm if anything, I give them something that hopefully they can use and get some value from, but I'm also just demonstrating in that interaction. Okay, well, this guy knows what he's doing. I mean, he's in at least 4 other schools right now, and this is, in growing, and he's the one who's speaking at this event. So it's a credibility demonstrator, and it's also just a kind thing to do. Here's a way I can help you. And that's truly what I'm here to do, is I want to help you. I want to help these schools transform their culture of achievement. And I think that earns trust way more than, here's a breakdown of how many hours of what it costs before you're jumping into all that.
One of the things that I always say in business is that you trust your gut. And a buddy of mine who started businesses as well, we used to say, trust your gut, nitwit. And my gut told me that we would work really well together. I had to wait, I believe, nearly a year for that to work out, for the timing to be right, for the money to be right. But as I think back on the conversation that we just had, I want to point out why you were exactly a really perfect client, a perfect fit for the Ed Sales Elevation experience. And what our audience can learn from that. You defined your perfect client. You didn't try and serve everyone. You niche down, and you're solving a very, very particular pain point. You have a very clear offer for people. You are now nurturing conversations and pilots into long-term partnerships. And those people are getting wins, and you know how to leverage those wins for your business. And that part feels comfortable. So step by step, you have followed the Ed Sales Elevation experience. You've been super coachable, and you've been very enjoyable to work with. And I love seeing the wins that you're getting. So talk to us about what the future of your business looks like. And it doesn't have to be all rosy, because I know it's not, because it's not for any of us. So you can give us, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So as I prepare to get in front of this room next week, and I think the day after that, I have a call with a district superintendent office that we were referred to by a current school partner. I start to see here the traction happening, that there's word of mouth. People are responding to the data. So, I do hope that we are going to not only expand these 4 partnerships, but we're going to get into 5 to 10 more schools, at least, in the coming school year. I think that's not overly optimistic, given the number of leads in the pipeline. And I think that's been a huge thing, is that, and a huge confidence boost and a huge pressure off my shoulder, is knowing there is a lot of leads coming in now. Still not as many as I'd like. I'd like it to be, even booked 3, 4, 5 calls a week. And I know I'll get there, if we keep working at this. But there's so much opportunity that enough of it's going to come through. And that's going to allow me to hire, somebody who can help with some of the logistics and operations and tutor management. Because right now, it's still me, and that it's a lot of things I would prefer to be more just preparing for these kinds of speaking events. That would be great, to just be in conversation with these school partners and principals. I think that's really where right now I'm most passionate about that. I enjoy that aspect of the work the most. And a lot of the kind of the nitty gritty of running and managing the business, I'll do it, but I would love to eventually get to the point where we're sustainable enough and profitable enough that I can hire a team for that. And I think I'll get there.
A wise man named Paul King once taught me that good things come to those who wait. So I'm sure that you will get there. I'm proud to be alongside with you, and your story, in so many different ways, I know will resonate with our audience and will teach them that hard work, patience, and drive, and always a little bit of luck, pays off. So thank you for being the teacher to me to wait, and thank you for allowing me to work with you. And I wish you all of the best. And you're gonna really do a great job here next week, and I'm excited to hear about it.
Thank you so much for all of your help and all your coaching that you've done and you continue to do for me. And you've helped me so much. And thanks for having me on today. It's really been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Cool. Alex Hormozy, who I follow a lot, and I think you do too, talks about BAM FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. And what Paul King just did is he booked a meeting from a meeting, because now we have to have a follow-up conversation to hear how everything goes in this next meeting. So we'll see you soon, my friend.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Josh.
Cool.